Welcome, everybody. Glad you're joining OKCPS today. So really, I think we all want to talk about what's going to be happening in the fall in Oklahoma City Public Schools. And to do that, or to get there, I want to rewind to June, late June. I think it was the 30th in a board meeting. We presented our preliminary plan, which included two options for our kids and teachers. One option was return to school, business as usual, so to speak. Option two was a virtual option. As we navigated through June, July to get to where we are today, we met again on July 13th with the board and updated them based upon the following. We have parent and teacher surveys that went out. We received responses. We had been paying very close attention to what our public health officials were saying, close contact with Oklahoma City County Health, the city, the governor's office, State Department of Education. And so we collected information and updated some of our thinking on July 13th, which we asked for. A recommendation was to wear masks, everybody, kids, teachers. We moved away from a 5-day all kids back option to an A-B model, where we would bring half the kids back 2 days a week and the other half of the kids a different 2 days. And we continue to listen and pay attention. One of our guiding principles from day one has been flexibility. And so last night in a board meeting, we brought our recommendation to the board for a vote on how we would like to begin school in the fall. So a lot of details to the plan. I want to give you a couple of the highlights, and then I know Jason and Paula can certainly add or fill in the gaps as they want to do. But the highlights would be that we recommended an August 31st start date, day one. So we moved from the 10th to the 31st. And then additionally, in addition to the calendar change, we recommended a full virtual start to our school year. And Jason will probably talk a little bit about what that looks like. What is it? What does that mean? And so two major components: 31st, first day, and 100% virtual by students. And again, lots of other details and lots of things that we are considering, waiting on additional information. But the board asked great questions. We had a marathon meeting and it was very productive. And at the end of the day, the board approved both agenda items. Number one, to move to the 31st as a first day. Item number two on the action item agenda was to adopt our back to school plan, which is to begin 100% virtual. We anticipate that we will go 9 weeks. We're planned and ready to do so. But the third agenda item on our agenda last night authorized me and my staff to make decisions, operational decisions, as we continue to move through the fall. What that means is that we're going to continue to pay attention to our circumstances, listening to health officials and others who can help us make decisions. And somewhere along the way, within that first 9 weeks, we will meet again, probably multiple times with our board and provide updates, so that maybe in September or October, if miraculously our circumstances change for the positive, favorably, we can consider incrementally bringing kids back to school in maybe an A-B type model. But for now, we're going to begin the year 100% virtual, and we plan to do that. We anticipate doing that for a 9-week period of time. A couple other thoughts, and then I'll turn it over to Jason or to Paula. We recognize that there is no great answer in front of us. Any direction we go, whether it's 100% in school, half and half, A-B model, hybrid, or 100% virtual, none of them are great options because of potential consequences. So we know that in choosing this option, there are those who disagree. We know that had we selected the A/B, there are going to be those who agree and disagree. What we have said from day one is we will be flexible and we will base our decision making on what is the best and safest response to our current circumstances. And that's what we believe we've done. But make no mistake, the best education is when we have teachers and students face to face. And we want to get there as quickly as we can, but we want to be safe and thoughtful about it. And that's what we believe we've done. We are continuing to evaluate, and I know these will be questions, we're continuing to evaluate what 100% virtual really looks like for our teachers, what kind of training we're going to present to them, how do we train families and kids, how do we get devices into the hands of all of our students when we're beginning the year virtually, what does connectivity look like, and we can talk about all of those things. But for now, we believe the safest, best route under our current circumstances is the 100% virtual start and pushing the date to the 31st. With that, I'll hand off. I know there will be questions to follow, but I want to hand off to Jason for any comments that he would like to make.
Thanks, Dr. McDaniel. I'll just reiterate that, as educators, hopefully the thing that guides us and leads us each and every day is what's best for students. And the toughest job you have as an administrator is choosing between two decisions that are both tough and that you don't feel like either are necessarily great for students. And that's the dilemma that we're faced with here. So in that vein, what we did is we knew there were certain reasons why and could clearly articulate reasons why students need to be in school. But because we have to choose between two really tough decisions and we're choosing to educate our students starting off virtually, then we're going to take those very same reasons, those 5 or 6 main bullet points that are why students need to be in school. And as I explained to the board last night, we're going to flip those, turn those on their head, and our priority preparing for the next 5 weeks will be to how do we still provide those same services? How do we meet those needs that we know that were being met when students come to school? How do we feed students? How do we meet their social and emotional needs? How do we still make sure that students are okay? Their well-being is okay. How do we confirm and reiterate instruction and reinforce instruction? So that's where we're going to put our efforts, is to mitigate the issues that typically come from not being in school and try to make this the very best experience for our students and for our families. So that's where we're going to put our efforts, knowing that an all virtual start, none of us would choose that over a traditional start, but every single one of us for Oklahoma City Public Schools would choose our students to be healthy and safe. And that's the route that we're taking. Ms. Lewis, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Dr. McDaniel. So I wanted to start with saying that I believe that we are, as a district, very prepared for where we are right now. I'll rewind like Dr. McDaniel did and say back in June of 2017, we hired Dr. McDaniel, and he's been here with us for 2 years. During that time, I don't have to remind you guys of some of the major initiatives that he has led us through, and he has gathered up an all-star team. So I want to reinforce that the board's support of this plan and support of Dr. McDaniel and his team. We're totally confident in Sean as a leader and his leadership team. There is no doubt that there's not one answer here that is going to fit every scenario that we could put out there and the district could put out there. Our number one job is keeping kids safe and educating kids and providing that. And so how the district chooses to deliver their educational model on August 31st, the board is supportive of that virtual option, and we look forward to hearing updates regularly. Just wanted to again say we support Dr. McDaniel and his team, and we recognize the hardships that this causes for families and students, and we recognize the social emotional that. We do believe this was the best option moving forward. That's all I've got.
All right, thank you all. And now we can get started with the question section. First up, is anyone here from the Oklahoman?
Hi. This question, I don't know if Dr. McDaniel or Brown, if either of you are better suited to answer the question. I was just curious how many students were never reached and were or never logged into any assignments over the spring, and whether that number grew. I think Carrie last night mentioned all students. Did you ever kind of way to put a number to how many students that was?
Well, I'll take a stab at that, and then Jason, if you want to jump in. What we determined through the spring is that we had a percentage of kids, and it was between 25 and 30%, who either were without a device or without connectivity. And so what we have done is we've spent weeks and months over the summertime identifying who those were who were without connectivity or without a device or both. And we have almost completely closed the gap. We're not 100% there yet, but we've moved to a one-to-one device opportunity. So we will be putting iPads for the little ones, Chromebooks for the older kids in the hands of all of our students. Everyone will have a device. The connectivity portion, we had several partners step up. We were able to identify where hotspots were needed. The district used CARES money, purchased multiple hotspots. I think our last number was 1,500. I may be off a little bit there. And so by the time school starts on the 31st, we believe we will have closed that gap. We are still searching far and wide to make sure that kids do not fall through the cracks with either connectivity or devices, but we've come a long ways as we've evaluated how the spring went with regard to distance learning. Great question.
Okay. Next up, state impact. Robbie, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Thank time to talk with us today. I had a question. You both have talked a lot about lessons learned during all this, especially during the spring semester, as far as the switch to remote. I was wondering, what were some of those concrete lessons that that you guys did pick up from the spring, and which specific one led you to want to become a one-to-one district?
Jason, go ahead and jump in there, and I've got a couple thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I can take that. Several things. Number one, we found that that the issue of equity and the division between our students as far as the haves and have-nots on technology was even greater than we had previously thought. And I think other districts around the state found that also. So because it's a combination of devices and consistent connectivity. And so even if you have devices, you need consistent connectivity. And when multiple students may be learning from the home, then spotty connectivity can be detrimental to multiple students learning in the home. So that's one of the tough lessons that we learned as a district, we learned as a state, and we learned as a country, that in today's age, connectivity to resources should almost be a fundamental right. And we have a disparity between affluence and how much connectivity individuals have. And so that's one of the lessons learned. So we're trying to shore up that gap, as Dr. McDaniel indicated, as far as getting not only devices for all of our students, Chromebooks for grades, I believe 3 through 12, and then iPads for grades pre-K through 2. And then also the connectivity of the hotspots we've already purchased, hotspots that we've applied for the grant that the State Department is providing. And then we have a plan to purchase the remaining to fill the gap that we feel like we can get turned around really quick as soon as we know what that grant is from the state. So those are the main lessons. One-to-one was expedited by the pandemic because it really shown a bright light. It really has shown a bright light on the need to have technology readily available. Some of the other lessons learned, very briefly, are that we need to teach kids how to learn remotely and our teachers how to teach remotely. Now, there are some that are more technology inclined than others. However, that does not necessarily mean that they know how to stay engaged and that teachers are experts at interacting. Now, our teachers figured it out really quickly, but the opportunity at this point to spend some time instead of just learning 2 days before spring break or a day before spring break that you weren't going to see your students anymore is an opportunity that we're going to take advantage of and really prepare not only our students and our teachers, but also our families. So those are the lessons learned that we did have a gap to fill, and we're ready to fill that gap.
I would just add to that, one of the lessons I think we learned that we talked a lot about, continue to talk about, is the depth of challenge that many of our kids have from a social, emotional, mental health standpoint. I mean, we're very well aware of the challenges that our kids come to school with in a normal setting. But a lesson learned was the ability, or having the ability, to quickly assess and evaluate how our kids are doing at home. And then being able to meet those challenges. We have a hotline, 587-FEEL, FEEL, to address the challenges the best that we can and to connect families to resources. So as we've navigated the last several weeks, our lesson is that we've got to be very quick to respond while we're in a virtual setting. And, I might add, while we're talking about mental health, social, emotional, this is one of the things that made this a very difficult decision. We know that if we were to choose, hey, let's come back to school, that we're in a state in Oklahoma County of increased transmission, hospitalizations, all those things related to COVID. And so by bringing kids back to school, teachers back to school, support employees, we knew that there was some risk there. On the other hand, if you say we're going to go virtual like we chose to do, you are keeping kids at home, and many of them have these challenges that we just talked about. We refer to them as ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And so either way you go, there is some risk involved to the safety and well-being of our kids. And so there's no right answer. There's no, everybody looks around the room, thumbs up, yeah, we got it. We're not suggesting that. We're saying this is our safest, best answer with regard to our current circumstances. So that was a lesson learned, is just being able to quickly evaluate and respond to these challenges while in a virtual setting. Paula, do you have anything you wanted to add to that particular question?
I just want to say that we were on track to be a one-to-one district. That was a goal that we knew to move OKCPS forward needed to happen. This expedited it, and I think that in the long run, this will be better for the students in OKCPS.
Okay, thank you. Oklahoma City Free Press, Brett. I think you're muted.
I'm experimenting with keystrokes, trying to do that instead of trying to maneuver around to that thing. Chris, I have a couple of questions. I'll ask one now, and then on the second round, I'll have another question. Dr. McDaniel and Jason both, last night, you guys, there were several questions from the board members about training. There's a real concern about training for parents. I think it was Carrie Jacobs that said, boy, as a parent, I wouldn't want to just have a hot spot and a laptop thrown at me, and try to navigate all that kind of stuff. And for teachers also, Ruth Veals, brought up the concern about teachers been teaching for a long time, very effective face-to-face in the classroom. Now all of a sudden they have to be virtual teachers. So basically, how many hours of training and what types of training are you going to offer? I guess require for teachers and offer to parents.
Yeah, Jason, why don't you walk everybody through that? Just, Brett, good to see you. Conceptually, this is a new world for all of us, and we know that as we walk into unfamiliar areas that it is going to require training for everybody, me included, households, parents, guardians, kids, teachers, support employees. So conceptually, we recognize that, and we're going to bring that to our community. Jason, talk to us a little bit about what that looks like and what our plans are shaping up to look like.
So as I speak to the training for teachers, students, and parents, I'll give an example for teachers just in the difference in what we have to prepare teachers for. So while some teachers may be better prepared than others at this point. So for example, Brett, you and I as old school teachers, if you'll allow me to use that phrase for both of us, when we had a unit or something that we wanted to teach, we either created or we went to a file folder and we decided here my lecture, here are my plans, here are my activities that I want to do. And the students didn't really see those until we were prepared to present them to them. With a learning management system, the concept is a little different. You're able to load either the entire semester, the entire month, or the entire week's worth of activities. So imagine giving a student an access to a lecture, to an activity prior to even teaching that lecture, prior to actually presenting that. And you give it as a resource. And instead of saying read a chapter, you can say, if you want to preview the lecture, here are the notes that I'm going to be going over on Monday. If you want to preview an activity, but the students have access to the material 24/7 using the learning management system. Now, so for teachers, that means how do I put that on there, and what's the difference when I'm used to holding on to that just prior to giving it to students? So teaching in that digital realm for some will be a little different. Some will pick up on it. Some have already started to advance that way as they've put their curriculum and their activities online, and they're already doing flipped classroom, and they're engaging kids in using technology. Our students are in the exact same boat. Some of them have teachers or have experiences where they've learned online, or they've pulled those YouTube videos up to watch a lecture or see an activity. It's our parents really that are going to need to adjust. To me, have the greatest adjustment, and so we're prepared to do that. As I spoke to the board last night, I found that I received several emails from our educational technology services team who were very quick to gently remind me that they were on that they had a website ready to go. They were preparing documents. They were preparing units and information for parents and parent guides for not only how to interact with the device to help your student, how to interact on a digital platform, and then just questions and answers for parents. So we are preparing that, and that's really, again, one of the reasons for the delay. Again, the other reason obviously being that we would hope that the numbers would start going in a better direction, but also to make sure that everyone is adequately prepared. So it is different, but once you catch on, it's new and exciting. It's like going to keeping your calendar on the computer. Once you convert, you become a convert. It takes a little practice, but we feel like we have the resources to deploy to help those students and parents, and our teachers are going to be trained up until that time.
Okay, thank you. Associated Press, Sean, did you have anything?
Yes, thanks. I was just curious how this decision will affect fall sports for the district.
It's a great question, Sean. I'm hoping you spell your name the right way. So what this means is that we're going to walk slowly through that piece. From the outside looking in, and we've had several pieces of input regarding this. When you look at a decision to close brick and mortar schools, to go virtual, doesn't it logically follow that everything related to schools would also close down? So if no school, then there should not be band, there should not be football, volleyball, etc. And that is a valid point. What we want to do is look at fall sports independently. While there are similarities between bringing kids together in a cross-country setting or a band setting to bringing kids into a school setting, there are also some differences. And so we want to have the opportunity to examine those differences. The OSSAA, our governing association where it comes to athletics and activities, has said that we could proceed with fall sports. We have phased it in our district, phase 1, phase 2, and now into a fall sports season. And so we're looking for additional guidance. We want to have an opportunity to examine whether or not we can keep kids safe in each one of these environments, in a football environment, in a band environment, in a drama, or whatever the environment is that would be a smaller group of kids that has some differences. If we believe we can, then we will move in that direction. If we believe we cannot, then we will make decisions accordingly. For right now, we're waiting on a couple other pieces. The state board meets tomorrow. And then we recently were sent a survey, all member districts of the association, so that the association could see where we stood on fall sports. And we're waiting on results from that survey. And that's just more data that will inform us as we continue to make decisions for our kids.
Okay, thank you. Is anyone here from Fox 25?
Hi, yes, I'm here. So we already talked about how face-to-face interaction is the most effective for students. Can you speak to the challenge of, keeping students accountable while we do this virtual learning?
Jason, go right ahead.
Yes, sir. Well, the first thing for parents, they'll have to make a decision. They'll have to make a decision whether they want to enroll them into our E3 learning program or into our remote instructional program. And while those seem very similar because they are both happening virtually or remotely or through the computer, they're actually quite different. The E3 learning program is what we as educators would call asynchronous learning, meaning that it does not have to all happen at the same time. Whereas if you we will, unless a parent opts for that, our students will be automatically enrolled into just their regular class, and then they'll receive that instruction from their regular teacher, just happen to be remotely or virtually. But we want to make sure that as we ease back into regular, traditional schooling, whether that starts out at 2 days a week or 3 days a week, and then hopefully getting to 5 days a week as soon as we can get past this hurdle of the pandemic, then we want them to have already built that relationship with the teacher. So this model that we're using right now is an example of synchronous. It's real time. We're getting to interact. An example of asynchronous would be if we just recorded this and sent this to individuals, and you guys at various times would then watch a video press conference. So you would be getting the same information just at different times and without the real-time interaction. So parents are going to have to make that decision, and it depends on what's best for the parents and best for the students. Some students do better at moving at their own pace, and they want to spend quite a bit of time on a piece of material that they struggle with, and they want to zip through something that they feel like they've already mastered. And others want the more synchronous approach where they're moving at the same pace as the rest of the class. And so they're getting that real-time interaction with the teacher, and the whole class is moving together. So that alone will account for a couple different learning modalities for students. And so we're hopeful that we can guide parents in the right direction, provide them great information, and then utilize that to access the strength of the student. So that's one of the first things that we'll need to do in order to fully utilize an online virtual platform in either way, either synchronous or asynchronous.
Okay, thank you. Is anybody here from News 9?
Hello, this is Storm with News 9. I was wanting to ask what the plan was, or the plan being considered for students with special needs and ELL students.
That's a great question, Storm. So on the agenda last night at our board meeting, we had agenda action item number 3 was granting some discretion to me and to my staff to make operational type decisions as we move through the pandemic, as we get school started. And one of the things we talked about in our board meeting was how would we be able to serve, how would we be able to address smaller groups? And so we know that We have some of our student groups who have different needs than maybe another student group, or different needs than the general education population of kids. Our special ed kids need us. Maybe as much as anybody in our school system, they need to be face-to-face in many instances with our teachers. And so we're looking at the board meeting, the state board meeting tomorrow, to hopefully give us some guidance on what that might look like in a building. As you probably all know, the state board is going to be presented with a color-coded schematic, so that if very similar to the Department of Health, I believe, but focused on schools. So we want to see what that guidance looks like, and then we can have conversations about special education, and based upon guidance we're given in a virtual setting, how can you meet the needs of, for example, your special education kiddos? And so we're anticipating the meeting tomorrow, looking forward to it. And then we will immediately begin having conversations about how that could impact us. Again, right now we're talking about 100% virtual. We're not talking about kids in buildings right now. But we want to be flexible, we want to be safe, and we want to be able to serve our kids at the very highest level within the boundaries that we are provided. So great question, and those answers remain to be seen based on guidance that we will get.
Okay, thank you. Next is Channel 5, Trina.
Good morning. I want to get into a little bit more about the computers that are going to be given to the students. Getting a lot of questions about that. They want to know what computers are going to be given to which students, and how will they be provided with those hotspots. Is this going to be given at registration time? Kind of talk about that a little bit in detail if you can, please.
You bet. Jason, that one's yours.
Yes, sir. So in regards to computers and computer deployment, we had a previous deployment plan in our previous recommendation for 5 days traditional, or an option for virtual, because we still wanted to put technology in the hands of every student. So we ordered the technology early. For pre-K through 2, that technology is going to be an Apple iPad, because we feel like that age group will interact better, and the software that we're going to use for a couple of those grades works really well on a touch screen like the iPad. For grades 3 through 12, it will be a Chromebook. And so that Chromebook will be deployed to students, we are hopeful, prior to August 31st, because we want to put them in the hands of kids early. Obviously, then we'll evaluate who we missed or which parents or students couldn't make it. We'll have a couple contingency plans, but the goal is to put those in the hands of students early. We have had some discussion, even as late as this morning, of how we could limit parents having to come to a building, even if it's to pick up a Chromebook or a device, and how we can collaborate and coordinate some of those activities. And so that would be ideal for parents, is to be able to have a one-stop shop in picking up either a hotspot, definitely a device, and possibly even conducting some of the enrollment verification information that we would need. As far as the hotspot, we did a survey of our students during the spring and at the beginning of the summer to identify households. We did phone calls. We followed up numerous phone calls to parents, and trying to complete a survey that would identify those who did not have solid and connectivity in their homes that could be used for either their student or multiple students. So we're using that number as a baseline of how many hotspots we need, knowing that things change over the summer. So we'll have a surplus over that amount, but we're ready to fill in that gap. We successfully deployed hotspots over the summer for summer school. It worked really well, and students were interactive. Our teachers did a great job in teaching them virtually. So we'll use a very similar model or any lessons learned from that deployment to hand out to our 40,000 plus students.
Okay, thank you. Kelsey with Channel 4 has been texting me her questions, but her question just got answered. So we will move on to KTOK. Is anyone here? Okay. Oklahoma City Chamber, Justin, are you here? Okay, Metro Family Magazine, Lindsay.
My questions have been addressed. Thank you guys so much for your time this morning.
Okay, great. Then we'll start back at the top. Nuria, did you have anything else?
Yes, just 1 second. So I'm trying to conceptualize how the remote plan will be different. Superintendent McDaniel, you said it's going to be light years ahead of what it was in the spring. I think Mr. Brown, you did a great job of explaining the differences in the pace and from that standpoint. But just from the student experience, how is it going to differ from what they experienced in the spring? I know they'll have grading and attendance taken, but just is it a lot of Zoom meetings, work to do on their own time? Just what is the day-to-day schoolwork and class going to look like for those kids doing remote learning from home?
Yeah, let me talk about light years. You know, when we hit the spring, we had roughly 10 to 12 days to get prepared. And so we did the very best that we could. Kudos to our academic team and others who jumped in and said, we can make this work. So light years means we now have better connectivity. We're going to have a device in the hands of every student, and we're going to have more of a teacher influence. If you remember back in the spring, there's really a lot of kids. If you had connectivity and a device, you could access supports. You could access lessons. If you didn't have connectivity or a device, we would hand you a hard copy paper packet as you circled through one of the meal distribution sites. And so now we have much more of a teacher influence. Though it's not face-to-face, every student will have an OKCPS teacher to interact with. Though virtually, they will know them by name. They will be able to develop a virtual relationship to begin with. And so the influence of our teachers is the game changer for me when I talk about light years, added to the much better connectivity and the devices in the hands of every student. So the teacher is the game changer as we move into the fall.
Thank you so much.
Hey.
Are we going to add to that, or are we?
No, I think we're good. I think Dr. McDaniel did a great job. The only thing I would probably add, Nuria, is that the thing that we were not able to do in the spring, and that's deploy services in a variety of ways. How do you incorporate our counselors, our social workers, our translator, our bilingual assistants, our special education assistants? We did not have the time to prepare to deploy the various resources. Now, our teachers and our staff did a great job. We had teachers that get extremely creative in a short amount of time, but we did not have an opportunity to plan for how we deploy those services to students and services that we knew they needed. And so we created opportunities like the 587 field number and the 587 help number, but those were crisis management in a time of crisis learning. And so now we have an opportunity to be proactive and intentional. And actually, while those still may be utilized, we have much better opportunity to prepare to deploy the services that students need.
Okay, thank you. Robbie, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I had a quick question about the third item that was passed by the school board last night. I think there was a lot of discussion, and for me at least, I got a little confused as to what actually these special powers are that you were given, and a timeline on how long you'll be able to use them, what they are. I guess, could you just explain really quickly the finer points on what those special powers are and when sort of you will be able to utilize them and how long they last as well? So
I have special powers. Thank you, Paula, for these special powers you have
Yes.
provided.
What?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as we move through the rest of the summer and into the fall, let's say we go 9 weeks, I would anticipate that this discretion that was provided would last through the virtual opportunity or the virtual platform that we find ourselves in. So 9 weeks in, I'm anticipating that my special powers will go away. Let me give you a couple of examples. Let's say that we move through, we get school started, we see that circumstances are favorable, maybe transmission rates, whatever those metrics are that we look at are on the decline. And we have a special ed director that says, we've got some kids who may be in a self-contained situation during the school year. Is it okay if one of them comes into the building to get special lessons, some attention paid to them, get them in a setting where they can succeed? I want to be able to say, well, let's check all of the safety measures. Let's make sure that we have a teacher who is willing to do it. Let's look at zip codes. Where does this child live? What is the safety precaution for that particular zip code? As you know, it's not just by county, it's by zip code within a county that we're looking at. And we think it's in the best interest of a student to get into a teacher during a virtual setting. I want to have the discretion to be able to say yes or no to that. There are operational things. We may need to make a purchase that it's an equipment purchase. Maybe we need additional Chromebooks as an example, or iPads. In a typical scenario, we would need to go to the board, get approval, and then, as you know, that's a 48-hour file with the county for a board meeting, posted 24 hours in advance. And so we're talking about 2 or 3 days before we might be able to get a decision implemented. So these are not ginormous, profound, groundbreaking things that I want to make independent decisions about. These are operational things that we believe within our safety constraints that I, along with my team, can make without each time going back to the Board of Education. And so that's what this grants. And then when we're out of a virtual setting, those superpowers disappear.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, Brett, did you have another question?
Yes, Robbie did a great job, better job than I would have at asking that question. Good answer, Dr. McDaniel. I had a third question I was going to ask if I got a chance. So Robbie, thanks for getting me on third base there on that one. So I want to ask Dr. McDaniel or Jason, whichever one of you want to handle this. What feeding students, food insecurity. The district meets a lot of food insecurity needs with the high poverty percentage of our student population in Oklahoma City Public Schools. So, what did you learn from that? Basically a fire drill last spring about how to feed kids remotely, and then what have you learned, and how are you going to do that differently when school starts up again?
I'll jump in and tell you what I learned, and I think I speak for our team. We learned that we have to be more creative in how we get food to kids. So we did a great job. To date, Brett, we have served over 1.5 million meals to our kids since the pandemic started. So we know we're getting food to families. But a lesson learned, and we have a solution for this, is even though we're giving food and it doesn't cost, and we've created a walk-up line and we've created a drive-through line, we have kids who cannot get to us. And so though it is a great benefit to families, we have kids around our city who just can't get to one of our 42 different meal distribution sites. Thankfully, in one of the waivers that we have, we can deliver meals. And so you talked about, somebody asked a question about bus drivers earlier. You know, we need to be very creative about identifying where those kids are. And we've had some very good communication from families saying just that we can't get to you. And so we identify where they live, and we do our very best to get meals to them. And we'd like to be able to continue that. The other thing we learned was that we have an incredible community. We had people stepping up all over our city saying, hey, we've got some kids in our neighborhood that can't get to you. Is there anything we can do as a volunteer or as a community partner to help you get meals to kids? And we were within the guidelines. We were able to take advantage of volunteerism to A, help us identify where some of these pockets existed, and B, to help us with meal delivery. And so we're going to continue learning, but those are two valuable lessons that we learned. What I would suggest to anybody who is going to hear this, and we've tried to communicate this, is we need to know, we need the information. You know, we're not satisfied with a $1.5 million meal distribution. That's a great number. We know it's working for some, but if we're not getting to you, we need to know that so we can devise a plan, develop a plan so that all of our kids can have 2 meals a day. Great question, Brett.
Thanks. I want to take this opportunity to thank Crystal for doing such a great job here of rounding us all up, going through this thing. This is kind of like herding cats to be dealing with the press like this, Crystal. So good job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, Sean with AP, did you have anything else? Okay. Fox 25, Angelica.
I think all my questions were answered. Thanks so much for doing this. Appreciate it.
You bet.
No problem. News 9.
Hi, Tavis here. Yes, we have one more. So do you think you've seen a decrease in enrollment since everything happening?
Well, we have a planning, research, and evaluation team in Oklahoma City, high caliber scientists, researchers who they project out our enrollment for years. And even before the pandemic, we had projected that we were going to decrease in enrollment again during the 2021 year. We don't have necessarily right now a scientific way to see whether or not we're going to lose additional kids because of the pandemic. But I think it's fair to anticipate that. We are very hopeful that because of some of the things we've been able to do in Oklahoma City, from Pathway to Greatness and some of the things we've been able to bring into our district, along with the planning that's taking place right now with our virtual option, our E3 option, and then the remote option that Jason talked about earlier, that our families and our kids won't have to look outside of the district to have their virtual needs met. You know, we see in the news about Epic as an example and the services that they provide. So we believe now that we're able to provide very similar services. Obviously, they've been doing it a long time and they've learned the game and they understand how to provide it. But we are also now able to provide that option or a similar option for Oklahoma City public school kids. And so we like that. And so we think that might allow people who thought about leaving because we were going virtual, that will allow them to stay and take advantage of our virtual opportunity. And so time will tell, but we anticipate that we may lose some enrollment on top of what we already expected as far as a decline. Time will tell, but whatever it turns out to be, we're going to offer the very best virtual experience that we can offer with our teachers and support. Great question.
Dr. McDaniel and Ms. Hillis, if you don't mind, if I could just share and take this opportunity to plug our online enrollment. We are actually actively asking parents who are new to Oklahoma City to go. We have an online registration and we have an online enrollment verification at okcps.org, just for those parents to have an opportunity to now enroll online and virtually. And so we look forward to having that information from parents, both new and returning.
Yes, thank you. Channel 5, Trina, did you have anything?
Just everyone is pretty much, all my questions have pretty much been answered, but just really some quick bullet points. August 10th is when students are going to be getting meals. Are students getting meals now, and will that include the weekends?
So right now, our summer meal distribution program ends on July 24th. And so we don't pick up again, as of right now, we don't pick up again until August 10th. Earlier in the spring, thanks to the Regional Food Bank, thanks to many of our volunteers, we were able to provide over 3,000 backpacks that would get the kids through last year. The weekends are a challenge during the summer, but we will pick the weekend meal distribution back up when school starts. So what we're trying to do now is close that gap from August 31st, when it will be 2 meals a day plus backpacks is our goal for the weekends, back to August 1st, when basically our summer meal distribution ends. So we're trying to close that gap, but for right now, we go from the 24th of July to August 10th with no meal distribution. We're hoping to hear about waivers maybe as early as today. But in the meantime, we're working on some solutions for weekends and closing that gap from the 10th backwards to today.